Could we imagine in 20 years' time, I think you're off to the BFI soon, going to the National Film Theatre in the South Bank, and they run a season called The History of 3D? Well, we might imagine what films might be there at the last 5 years, but I wonder, and particularly if you're, say, a student at a place like Ravensbourne, whether there'll be anywhere in 20 years' time to look back and say, how did all this happen? Because how much of it is serendipity, how much of it is originally technology driven, how much of it is things that we're simply not recording because we're going so fast. I was very struck with your comment about the film, you saying maybe this is the last time I choose to show this at a conference because I want to move on. But are you going to log in that piece of information that there was a piece of content in its context?
Interesting one. I mean, I don't know how many people have been watching it for long enough to even know that, forget about the 50s and what happened in the last century, but watching it most recently across the world in enough detail to actually even begin to log that history.
I just think we're incredibly bad, and have been for 100 plus years, and actually charting the history of how imaging occurred. You know, we can read up about Louis Daguerre, we can read up about Méliès, we can look at stuff in different ways, but actually so often the things that really occurred are not recorded that way, which is people coming together, creative people coming together.
I've been privileged to be involved in a job that kind of is sort of working with the Aerial Reconnaissance Unit, and we're looking at the stereo archive of the Second World War, and they have the Intelligence Corps, MI6, go back to the Boer War with aerial stereo photography, and some of this is quite staggeringly fantastic. And the way that they actually utilised it was, certainly during the Second World War, was to put a load of cameras on Spitfires, and the interactual was the distance that the Spitfire flew at 40,000 feet between one photograph and the next. There's an overlap of 65%, and you get depth, massive, beautiful depth photography in huge plates of 9 inch by 18 inches negative, 2,000 to a camera, 6 cameras on a plane, no guns, they just had to fly faster. And you can see the spray of the Mona Dam at 40,000 feet 5 minutes after the dam buster raid hit and breached the wall. It's extraordinary. You can see all the guards everywhere, and they were using that to develop bitmaps or depth maps, to create heights and buildings and get a feel of what was going on. And one of the things they found was, for example, that the tanks transporters had 2 levels. So they had to double the amount of people they were going to take out to work out the, just simple things like that. And those depth maps are exactly the same ones that we're using today in things like Nuke, in order to create that feel. And it's been around for ages. It's fantastic. The whole history of it in whole different areas is exciting.
That illustrates totally your point, because we're right now developing. We have a Cessna 206 in Africa, and we've just developed 2 cameras to put on one end of either wing in order to do exactly that. And we had no idea that had gone on before, but with the idea to.
Well, you can talk to the military, the Air Reconnaissance Unit, because they've got about 6 of these cameras left. So they're enormous, but they're not. They're not.
We need perhaps more of those lateral conversations. Comfort zone. You talked about, and again, we're not talking names, about people who are and people who are not in comfort zones in this process of change. Is there any piece of advice you would give to, particularly perhaps people who are thinking, they have got hoping to work in our industry in one form or the other, particularly as far as 3D is concerned?
Probably just as watch as much stuff as possible, watch bad stuff, watch good stuff, try and understand all the different ways a shot can be constructed in 3D and all the mistakes that can be made, so you can, allow your eyes and brain to sort of learn to recognize all these different things that can go wrong and all the opportunities within it. And just to experiment. I think there's so many things that haven't been tried yet in 3D. Just shoot as much stuff as possible and play with it and take it through the whole process yourself.
One of the other skills I believe is something you touched on about 20 minutes ago, which is you might not have the biggest budget in the world, but you've got people you can approach. And I think you suggested that you have a particular skill in approaching people and saying, "Can you help?"
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a principle that, you know, you apply right the way across the board with independent filmmaking. Is that you look at ways of making the impossible happen. And yes, it is expensive to shoot on 3D, but there's a lot of companies out there who are offering 3D facilities. There are lots of companies who are developing new equipment and need their equipment tested at every level. You know, from your Pace rigs, you know, with Cameron and Vince Pace, right the way down to, you know, semi-domestic 3D rigs. They all need to be used. They all need to be put in the field and shot, and they all need to be tested. And you know, you just got to go and ask people for favours and fight. You know, offer people something that is of value to them. You know, come with projects that are interesting. Come with projects that are using 3D in a different way, so it's attractive for, you know, for the experts to become involved in. I mean, and that's that's the challenge of it. But I mean, it's not a challenge that's any different from, you know, making independent films using other emerging technologies. You know, it's just a matter of being resourceful and looking at ways of achieving what you want. I mean, there will be, you know, our film was made for, you know, just under £3 million, which is considered to be very low budget right now for 3D films. But I can guarantee you within the next 2 years, people will be making films for £500,000, £1 million, and they'll be great. They'll be taking a different approach to shooting the 3D that allows them to, you know, to do it with those kind of resources. And it's up to us lot to be doing it, really.
Well, what would your advice be, Richard, to perhaps people who are looking to start their professional careers, places like Ravensbourne and beyond, in terms of this world of opportunity?
Just to be perfectly honest, follow Gareth through it. Play. I mean, make yourself a stereo pinhole camera. It's such fun. Just play with. I mean, the simple. You can build your own slider rig and just take stills. Very simple. Just move it left to right. It's just have lots of fun with it. Put things in it. Experiment. It's very, very, very simple to do on your own. There are little programs that you can easily do. You can make anaglyph programs if you want for the computer. You can, if you've got a 3D TV, you can do a little side-by-side off a laptop and just run it through your TV. You can make little films. I mean, there are, as Gareth was saying, domestic 3D cameras out there. There's a little Fuji one that's only about that big. I wouldn't necessarily use them to shoot a whole feature film, but they have a place in every single aspect of what you're looking at 3D. And 3D is a combination of two images offset against each other. And it's a simple process to play with. So if you're interested, have fun, because it's great. And what you get out of it is actually really quite extraordinary. You don't think you can do it, and you can. Everyone can do it.
And Vicky, storytelling, I keep being haunted by the story, which probably is incorrect, that George Lucas went around all sorts of places, just thought he was plain mad, wanted to create something called Star Wars, and even when Star Wars was being made in a British studio, half the team making it thought this man is completely mad, and this is all stupid, and no one will understand any of this. Is there some place, should there be some greater centre for thinking about storytelling, 3D? I don't mean we should be setting up universities and colleges, but there should be some way that there's a sort of greater opportunity for people to talk through their ideas, share their ideas, and move ideas.
Yeah, I mean, when you were asking Andy about the role of the stereographer and whether it was technical or how far it moved into the creative, I was thinking, well, actually, at the same time as you've got the stereographer kind of moving into the creative, actually, a huge amount of the learning needs to go on at the DOP end of it, where they do what Andy suggests, which is to watch as much as possible so that you understand the possibilities, how you might use 3D, so that there's this kind of middle ground between stereographer and DOP that at the moment is probably very undeveloped in terms of, because of the language that will evolve, because you can't have the two fighting each other, but you can't have a DOP who doesn't understand and think in 3D, because that will fight what the stereographer needs to do, and you can't have the stereographer imposing too much, because that'll affect how the DOP wants to, to tell the story. So I think that whole area, I don't know about spreading it to a wider people, but I think even within the professionals working in it at the moment, that's the area where an awful lot of attention needs to be focused, just through analysing and talking about it, so that language evolves, and so that the partnership, I don't know where it'll end up in terms of the role of the stereographer and the DOP and how that all fits together, but it won't go it'll go further when everybody understands it more.
I'd like to thank you all very much for taking part in this panel and for all the sessions you've contributed to throughout the day. Of course, the test question is, would you ever come back to North Greenwich again? But please don't answer that. I hope the answer, in one sense or the other, would be yes. But thank you so much, Gareth, Richard, Vicky, and Andy, for the time you've given. I've really enjoyed today because I feel I'm a group of enthusiasts, and I felt the passion. And I think I better get off and get hold of that Fuji camera now. So thanks very much for your time. Thank you.